Is this your homework, Larry?
Wait, let me explain something to you, okay? I'm not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, that or his dudeness or the duder or El Duderino, if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
That rug really tied the room together.
Obviously, you're not a golfer.
At least he's housebroken.
Jackie Treehorn treats objects like women, man.
Sooner or later, you're going to have to face the fact that you are a moron.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man. Okay, welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And today we're going to talk about The Big Lebowski, 1998 film directed by the Coen Brothers, starring Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, John Turturro, Steve Buscemi, Julianne Moore, all-star cast, like we always do. We always pick movies with all-star cast. That's just our thing.
Oh, you know what? It's actually just directed by Joel. Like, I don't think Joel and Ethan started directing.
Hold on a minute. It does say the Coen Brothers, but here's the thing. They have Joel be the director and Ethan's always the producer. But then when you look in like IMDb, it has them both listed as the director.
Yeah.
They kind of share responsibilities.
Well, they always do that, right?
They write, they produce, they direct, they do everything.
Yeah, just the different. It's a matter of credits.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
So it should be a fun conversation. It's a movie that has kind of grown on me over the years, and we'll find out what you thought of it. But Darin, last time we had a guest on, we talked about Men in Black. Let's recap that real quick.
Well, we had the Lady Wan on again. A good get, as I like to say. She's the co-host with Chris Salzo of the Screen Run podcast. Another joy, just a great joy and a great mind. So just being able to sit down with her and just laugh with her and talk about the themes of the movie and how much we enjoyed Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones and their chemistry together was great. It was fun talking about all the stuff that made us laugh, the special effects, like the influences. Obviously, we talked about like we said, the underlying theme of the movie, like nothing is what it seems. So we did talk about, like with that Thing You Do episode, it's a movie that's fun on the surface, but there's also another meaning that kind of runs and a theme that runs through the whole movie. And again, I'm sorry if I talked over her at all, but the Lady Wan has such a great fertile mind, and she's just able to talk about things in a way that gets you excited and makes you feel comfortable about what you're talking about. So yeah, Men in Black is absolutely one of the best blockbusters of that decade. Lady Wan is one of the best podcasters working today. So again, it was a pleasure having her on and a pleasure chatting with her. Hopefully we'll have her back in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great. She was a fun guest to have on. And just so she knows that she's watching now, I did go to Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, and I did go on the Men in Black ride, and it was a lot of fun. I got to say, I did get kind of sick, but I am getting older, so it's hard to not get sick on rides anymore. I don't know what it is about these rides that spin in circles, but I get sick with those kind of rides. But still a good time, still a fun ride, and a fun movie. So
we'll tell her.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about The Big Lebowski. But before we do that, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
Wait. Let me explain something to you. I am not Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. That or his dudeness or duder or El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
Are you employed, Mr. Lebowski?
Employed?
Do you like sex, Mr. Lebowski?
Is this your only ID?
You got the wrong guy. I'm the dude.
Your name's Lebowski.
Jeff Lebowski, the other Lebowski, the millionaire. I received this ransom note this morning.
This is a bummer, man.
They want you to take the money and act as courier.
What do you mean, man? What the hell is this?
My dirty undies, dude. The whites. Let's take that hell! Why should we settle for 20 grand when we can keep the entire million?
I know you're mixed up in all this.
Playing one side against the other in bed with everybody.
Blow on them.
Huh?
Fabulous stuff. What? Who's sitting on $1 million?
We want some money.
Sitting in the trunk of our car. Where's my damn money? Say, dude, where is your car?
Who's got your undies, Walter?
This is a very complicated case, Maud. You know, a lot of ins, a lot of outs.
Is this your homework, Larry? And I would like my undies back.
A lot of strands to keep in my head, man. Whoa! Hey, careful, man. There's a beverage here, huh?
I like your style, dude.
I have no choice but to tell these bums to do whatever is necessary to recover their money from you.
They were Nazis, dude?
They were nihilists, man. They kept saying they believed in nothing. You figured, oh, here's a loser, you know, a deadbeat.
Well, aren't you?
Well, yeah.
You cannot drag this negative energy into the tournament.
Jeffrey,
Maud,
love me.
that's my robe.
I'm throwing rocks tonight.
It don't matter to Jesus.
Okay, so The Big Lebowski, a 1998 film directed by the Coen Brothers, starring Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Steve Buscemi, Julianne Moore. Who else is in there?
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Right.
Gotta
He's
mention
great.
him. David Huddleston,
right.
Tara Reid, John Turturro shows up. David Thewlis.
Flea's in there.
Flea.
Yeah.
I was like, is that Flea?
He
With
shows
Peter,
up from time to time in movies.
with Peter Stormare, obviously part of that.
Right.
Right.
Obviously
Sam,
an all-star cast.
right. Sam Elliott, right?
Sam Elliott, who really wasn't sure why he's in this movie, but he does add something to it, I think.
Yeah, he does.
Coen Brothers movie. I mean, for me, the Coen Brothers. I mean, I think they're great, and I'm not going to put anything past them. But I think this is definitely one of my favorite films of theirs, and it wasn't always that way. And so I'll tell you what happened. My history with this movie, Darin, is I grew up, going to the Blockbuster store, going to Hollywood Video, and trying to find a movie to rent. And as I walked down the aisles, I would see this movie, The Big Lebowski. And for some reason, it would always repel me to like not rent it. It just had this look. The cover, for some reason, just wasn't appealing to me. And so, I would often kind of glance at it and think, what the heck's the Lebowski anyway? I don't want to watch this movie. And so I would just kind of ignore it. And so years went by and I never saw this movie. And, I knew it was a thing. I just never really got into it. And then finally, I think one night it was on TV and I just happened to glance at it for a second. And I think it made me laugh for a minute. And I was like, oh, this might be kind of funny. What is this? And so then I finally just broke down and rented it. And even then, I didn't really get what was so appealing about this movie. I just was kind of lost. It was like, doesn't seem funny to me. The main character is a loser. He's not someone that I want to like root for. For some reason, I just did not understand what was so great about it. Why people don't like it so much. But over the years, I slowly started to gain more and more appreciation for it. Like the more I learned about it, the more I realized there might be something to it. And so I kept like giving it another chance and giving it another chance. And then it started to grow on me. And then after maybe 6 or 7 viewings of it, like almost every single scene has something that makes me laugh. Like I'm by myself laughing throughout the entire movie from start to finish. And yes, there are some moments that are it kind of has a few lulls where it can get a little slow here and there. But this movie, it has something. I'm not quite even sure what it is to this day, what it has, but it has something. And it constantly makes me laugh. And it might just be the chemistry of the characters, or maybe it's the Coen Brothers script. But there's definitely something to it. But even though I still think it's one of my top Coen Brothers movies, I wish I had given it a chance earlier. Okay. But anyway, so yeah, kind of a deep history. But what about you? What's your experience with it?
I don't have like hardly any history with it. I know this movie came out after Fargo, and so it's one of those things like when somebody makes a movie that's so big and makes such an impact, right? You're totally in tune and ready for the next movie. And so I think when Lebowski came out, I didn't see it in theaters. I don't know if it even played around where I was, but I think I finally saw it either on VHS as a rental at somebody's house or a party, and it was funny, but I don't remember it having any kind of impact. And it was kind of weird coming after Fargo, being, oh well, this is kind of a lackadaisical kind of movie, like doesn't have any meaning really. There's nothing to it. But again, our conversation with Raising Arizona, I was in a different mindset, because we talked about Raising Arizona, and I just wrote that off when I was 10 years old, seeing that in the theater, because I didn't get it. Like, the humor just didn't hit me at the time. And then when we watched Raising Arizona for NostalgiaCast, you remember I had a totally different experience. Like, I think it might be their masterpiece, just because of the way that it plays with themes of parenthood that run all through the movie. So I wasn't ready to write Big Lebowski off like I was Raising Arizona, if that makes sense, because I knew that the Coen brothers were smarter than that. I just thought it was really funny, and I laughed a lot at the lines, and I liked the characters, but it was just one of those movies that you just kind of brush off. It's not really a lot of meaning. You're like, well, that was them. It didn't really work as well as Fargo, and so you move on to the next thing.
And I had a similar experience that you had with Raising Arizona. Like, I didn't like it at first, and it took me a few viewings to finally start to really appreciate it. So
yeah, and that's a common story. Like, talking with people on Twitter, I know that our friend Robert Yanis Jr., he did his own close watch with his friend Kerry Jones, where they talked about Big Lebowski, and he didn't like it either the first couple of times he saw it. He thought it was fine, but then I think during his conversation with Kerry on that episode, it finally just clicked with him, or she was able to convince him, or you know, the dudisms, being able to kind of convert him to the Tao.
Yeah.
But like, that's a lot of people's experience. And even the Coen brothers, I think, to this day, are like, well, this movie has a lot more meaning to other people than it has to us. And so I think people are just taking it to the point where I think Joel and Ethan even went to like some theater, and they had like somebody had a big poster up of the Big Lebowski, and they're like, what is this? And the person there didn't know who the Coens were, obviously, but she's like, oh, every night we have a showing of this Big Lebowski movie. People show up and they get dressed, and they dress up for it, and they sing along, and they talk along with it. And so the Coens, and she goes, you guys should come see it. So they did.
There is a Lebowski Fest that's held every year in Louisville, Kentucky. And they get together and they dress up as their favorite characters, and they will watch the movie, and they'll have like these bowling tournaments and that kind of thing. And so it's a whole thing. And there's a whole subculture of people who just, you know, love this movie.
Yeah. And in a way, I think that's more fascinating than the movie itself. Just the way that you're able to just pick up, like I said, there's, what is it, the Church of the Latter-day Dude or something like that. Like, they inspired an actual church and teachings and things like that. I think it's funny when a movie, but in a good way. We talked about Fight Club, you know, inspiring actual Fight Club, inspiring people to commit actual atrocities and terrorist acts in the name of Project Mayhem. And this is like the opposite of that. It's like people are just teaching, like, it's okay, man. Like, they're teaching like a good kind of attitude to have about life. And so it's just kind of the opposite of taking a movie's themes and running with it. I think that's, in a way, that's more fascinating than the movie itself.
Yeah. Well, that's always kind of fascinating me about this movie, is the character of the dude. Like, I've always kind of like been drawn to people who have that kind of attitude. Either they're kind of obnoxious, or they're very laid back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Either way, it kind of like appeals to me. Like, how can you live life that way? Like, 'cause I'm usually pretty like focused on and serious on what's going on in my life. And so in order to be like the dude and be very, you know, the dude abides kind of attitude, like that's kind of hard for me unless things are going really well. But then you have, you know, the other end of the spectrum with people who are like super serious, and they can't, you know, and they're, anyway, you know, the dude has this, you know, this ability to kind of like roll with the punches and kind of like take things as they come. And I've always been kind of impressed by people who can live life that way.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Well, it's funny too. Maybe obviously we want to talk about the Coens a little bit. I think, you know, with this decade, because you had Blood Simple, you had Raising Arizona, obviously, that kind of really kind of picked up steam with them.
Fargo came out just before this one.
Yeah, I think so. You had Miller's Crossing, you had Barton Fink, you had Hudsucker Proxy, you had Fargo, you had this, and then after this is Our Brother, We're Out There. Those are, no matter what you think about those movies that we mentioned themselves, those are very solid, like prominent films in the 90s, right? I mean, they made an impact. Hudsucker Proxy, I think that was one, it made more of an impact of people were like, well, what is this? After like Barton Fink, they kind of hit back a little bit. Every filmmaker hits that peak, and then that's when people decide to start picking on them or nitpicking their films. I think Hudsucker Proxy was kind of that movie, even though I enjoy the hell out of that movie. I think it's a lot of fun. But they're so prominent during this decade that there's no getting around not talking to them, talking about them. And what was it before we started recording? You thought that you had an interesting kind of attitude towards the Coens and their attitude toward us.
I mean, just doing some research and watching the behind the scenes and the documentaries and the interviews that they would have with the press and stuff. These Joel and Ethan, they just have this nonchalant attitude about filmmaking. Like, they just seem very, laid back, easygoing, and very just kind of simple. And so you watch the movies that they put out, and they're these very polished, movies. And when you see them talk about it, it's not, they don't have any kind of like excitement about what they're doing. They're just kind of like, yeah, we made a movie and we did this, and then, so what? That's kind of how it feels. And so I'm kind of having a hard time wrapping my head around like how they're so successful and how they're making these, really, really, impactful movies, but they're just so like, oh, whatever.
Well, it's funny because we know that their movies are just steeped in meaning. I mean, you could find all these themes and deep meanings, but it's funny when you talk to them, and you're right, they're very lackadaisical. It's like, I don't know, like, sure, like whatever you want to think of the movie, man. Like, it's like, and I don't know, I think that's part of their mystique. I know what you mean. It's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to kind of reconcile those two sides, right? Because they're so deep and they've got so much personality, but then they're just kind of, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
My experience with their movies too is I think I saw Raised in Arizona first when I was younger, and then probably this one and Hudsucker. And then I kind of started, when I started realizing what they were doing and how much I appreciated their work and what I liked about them, I started kind of going backwards. And then I saw, Miller's Crossing and Blood Simple, later. I didn't really see those ones first, even though they came first. And that was kind of interesting to do too, because you kind of got to see their progression and work backwards. But I mean, I love Oh Brother Where Art Thou, I love Burn After Reading. And they just kept going and kept making these really quirky, fun movies. And I mean, The Lady Killers, I don't like too much. I also don't like, what's the other one? Oh, the George Clooney one. The
Intolerable Cruelty.
Yeah, right? I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about that during Raiders Arizona some other time. I think the problem with Intolerable Cruelty, it's fun, it's funny, they're funny stuff, but if you told me the Coens directed it, I'd be like, what? Like, there's none of that. We mentioned in the previous episode about how there's nothing worse than a filmmaker who has such a voice all of a sudden makes a movie that has no voice, and you're like, anybody could have directed this. Why am I watching you make this movie,
right,
when you're capable of so much more?
I know you mentioned you didn't like The Man Who Wasn't There, and you actually gave me your copy of it. You're like, hey, you can have this. I was like, I took it home and I watched it, and I was like, this is great.
It's great.
Doesn't you like it?
I don't know. Maybe I have to watch it again. I was just really cold on it. I didn't get any feeling from it. Speaking of noirs, like there's definitely noir elements to this. There's noir elements to Fargo. There's noir elements to Miller's Crossing. I love all those. Man Who Wasn't There just didn't quite hit me, but like I said, I'm not willing to write them off. So maybe I need to watch it again. Something like The Lady Killers, I'm not going to watch that ever again. There's just nothing. There's nothing under the surface.
Tom Hanks does some interesting things with his character, but that's about all he really has going for it.
Yeah, if Hanks can't save or sell a movie, then there's something wrong with it. And I think there's no, I don't know, there's no meat to the bone there. But the thing that I love most about the Coens, and maybe you want to talk about this, is they're like we talked about in Intolerable Cruelty, there's none of these characters that are so indelible just in a few frames or just a few lines of dialogue. They sell so much of their personality, and that's one of the things that I love. If we're talking about the Coens, they're probably like 80-85% hit, like 15-20% miss. So on the whole, they have these characters that make such an impact. Like I said, even the side characters, people that don't have much of a role at all, they have personality, they have lives where you could spin off and you could make a movie about them. They're still so interesting.
Which is what happened with this one.
Which we'll talk about. But like, I don't know, what do you think about that with characters and things like that? Is that something that you like?
I think they're masters at developing characters, and I think they're master storytellers, and they're such good writers. Their dialogue is so fun and so quirky, and it just kind of, I don't know. I wish I could write like that. That's all I gotta say. I wish I could do what they do.
Yeah. Well, you can tell it's a Coen movie. Like when from just listening to their dialogue just for a little bit and how they talk to each other and things like that. And it's great when you get actors that kind of run with it. I know Frances McDormand's been there. Obviously, she's married to one of them. You got George Clooney, I think, pick up the ball and ran with it. John Goodman.
Goodman's in one of the movies.
John Turturro. So all these characters. So why don't we like talk about something we always talk about is the performances. I mean, what
well, I mean, first things first, we got to talk about Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he is the dude. I mean, I know the dude is based on a real life person named Jeffrey Dowd, and I think he's a friend of the Coen Brothers, actually.
Yeah, he was a producer who had that same kind of, he dressed the same.
Yeah.
Like he didn't care. He had the same like lackadaisical.
And he actually gave himself the name The Dude. And so that's where the whole thing came from. And that's not really a name that I would self-apply either. But anyway, Jeff Bridges, I mean, when he first read the script, he mentioned that he said he was born to play this character. And he said that if he wasn't an actor, he would probably have a life like the dude, you know, kind of just go throughout life, you know, and just kind of dealing with things as they come, you know. Anyway, but I think he just nailed it. I mean, he brought that character to life, and there's something so appealing about watching him play this character. I'm not really sure what it is, but he's so on the entire time that you can't take your eyes off of him. And the other people in the cast do a good job too in playing off of him, but he really does sell it, and he just is phenomenal as the dude.
Well, what was the anecdote like before they shot every scene? Like his only question for the Coens was like, did he
burn one on the way over?
And so he would like rub his knuckles in his eyes to give him the bloodshot look. The thing with Bridges, I think, I don't know if any of his performances before this, but I think he's kind of been scoring on that ever since. Like it's kind of the same. I don't know, Iron Man, he was a lot different. Like he had a different personality, but like even to the point where Tron Legacy, there's the Zen kind of thing that he has as the character in that one. And it's like, well, you're just doing the dude. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I would agree he's like born to play it because he's just such a natural at it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he probably, you know, brought elements of his own life into the character as well, which helps.
Yeah, that's even his clothes, right? Those are his clothes that he
wore. Yeah. And then, of course, John Goodman, the character who plays Walter Sobchak, he is based off, or kind of like, it was inspired by John Milius.
Yeah.
We talked about John before on the podcast, too, with Red Dawn and other movies that we talked about.
Yeah. Also a mix of, I think there was a script doctor named Peter Exlin that they knew, who would spout like Vietnam stuff. Like he would go into Vietnam. So there's I think he was an amalgam of Milius and this excellent guy.
Okay. I mean, but John Goodman too. Like that was one thing I think that was kind of a turnoff for me when I first saw this movie, was the John Goodman character, because he caused so much conflict that he didn't need a cause. It was like, man, if he would just stay out of things would be better for the dude. But because he kept causing more problems, I didn't like that character. But over time, I started to realize that's what's so funny about the story, is this Walter guy kind of injected himself into it and just screwing things over for the dude, you know?
But he's right for a lot of the mystery. Like he's right about Bunny, like kidnapping herself. Like he's right about that's not her toe. Like if you want, within 3 minutes, I can have somebody get you a toe. So it's like that. The thing with John Goodman, and I don't know, because obviously he was in Raising Arizona, so we talked about him and William Forsythe. But the thing with John Goodman, I don't know if there's another actor who can be so lovable, but also so terrifying, so utterly terrifying. Yeah. Going from Barton Fink, obviously tying into that, just a bunch of those. And here, what I love about his performance here is he's a little bit of both, because so what happens is when you watch a John Goodman movie, he's usually one or the other. He's not really the same. Like he doesn't really go from one personality to the next. He's just one, you know, in Speed Racer, he's cuddly. King Ralph, he's cuddly, you know, talked about Barton Fink. And this one, I think he's got a good mix of both, except when he gets loud and violent and scary, we know that he's full of crap. He's putting on a show.
Yeah.
That he doesn't really mean it. Like one of the themes of the movie that we'll talk is the kind of the puffing yourself up and making yourself like so like masculine. And so when he's threatening like the friend that steps his toe over the line with the gun, part of you like believes it because the characters believe it, but then another part does because you know he's just full of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just his performance in this is just, it's so loud. And I think he said that this is probably his favorite performance he's ever done, but he's so loud to the point, and they all have such a good chemistry, especially Buscemi. I don't know if we mentioned him to start
We
off
will.
with.
But real quick though, I mean, I know they had time to rehearse this movie, and so because they had time, I don't know if it was 2 months or 2 weeks, but they had time, and that really shows that they had time to build that chemistry. When you don't have that time to rehearse and you just jump into it, start filming, you don't get those little nuances and those little like reactions and those back and forth with the actors. But these guys had it, and because they had time to rehearse, so I think that really shows.
Well, I don't know if it had anything to do with it. I know that Jeff Bridges was used to like doing reshoots and things like that. And so because he hadn't worked with the Coens before, he called up John Goodman and said, what about the reshoots? What do I need to prepare for stuff? And Goodman was like, they don't reshoot their stuff. Like, this, how it is how it is. And you can you can play with the dialogue and things like that. But I don't know if that helped them like build a chemistry or kind of, but you're right. Like, they feel like they've been, would you say that it's their friendship that's like the heart of this movie?
I mean, yeah, that's definitely part of it. And that's what makes the moment at the end when Steve Buscemi, when Donnie dies, so touching and funny because of what happens there. But yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. But speaking of Steve Buscemi, let's talk about him for a second, because the Coen brothers wrote this part for Steve. And in Fargo, they gave him, a lot of dialogue, a lot of lines, and they put him against someone who didn't talk at all, really. And so, he's like the motor mouth. He talks a lot. And then in this movie, they decided to go the exact opposite way and give him like no lines, like 0 lines. So all he really says is little things like, he asks questions a lot. He's kind of like, he's not really even there. And you kind of forget about Donnie. And Wolf's always telling Donnie to shut up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whenever Donnie does talk. So that's kind of funny to have the two polar opposites of Fargo and then Big Lebowski.
Well, in the Roberts episode of Crooked Table or / Close Watch, he had an interesting thought. He thinks of the Donnie character as like us. He's like the audience surrogate, where he's just there. And every now and then he was like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? Like, he's trying to interject himself and figure out what's happening with the plot. But then again, he gets told to shut up.
Hey, that's your name, dude. Or like, hey, your phone's ringing, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Just little comments. Like, that's one of the gags that I liked, how the phone just kept ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing to the point where he says something. And that, I don't know. I just thought Robert made a really good point with it. I like that I don't know the exact dialogue, but like when they're in the bowling alley, and he has almost the exact same dialogue, like 2 or 3 times. Like, he bowls, and then he turns around, he's like, well, and he says something, he comments, and then he walks back to his seat. He does it in the same tone of voice, to the point where at the end, the final scene, where he only bowls a spare, and then he's weirded out. And
Did you notice that's the day that he dies?
Yeah, and then he goes and he sits down. And
he's
plays
rolling strikes and doing a great job. And then the time he doesn't roll a strike,
that's when he dies.
Nice.
But it's funny because when he notices that and he's weirded out, he goes and sits and he plays with his hand like his arm is hurting him. So that kind of signals he's having a heart attack. So but yeah, he's just, I don't know. Steve Buscemi's got such an indelible face and indelible presence that he can just turn around and look at the camera, and I just start laughing just because it's Buscemi, you know what I mean? So he's great. I really like him.
Yeah. All right, so John Turturro, let's do a quick thing on him, because he plays Jesus Quintana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this character in this movie, you like him in this movie, even though he's as they call him, a pederast.
Right.
You like him as this character in this movie. He has those 3 or 4 scenes that he's in, and he's not in very much, but he still makes you laugh, and it's these funny moments. And then of course John Turturro goes off and he makes a full-length movie all about Jesus.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't really work. And like, I don't know if it was because he was trying to do what the Coens would have done, or if I think he just went the wrong direction with it. There were some redeemable moments. They only go bowling once in the whole movie, but I don't know. I think sometimes there are characters that you love that are smaller characters in bigger movies that go off and try to make a movie all about that character. Doesn't really work as well as maybe it could.
Well, I know that they let him improvise a little bit. He had the little the long finger, the painted fingernail, and the rings, things like that. He's the one that licks the ball. I just think that he created the character again, makes such an impact and an impression but he only has maybe 2 or 3 scenes. two or three short scenes. So I think Turturro, maybe you would have been like, whoa, I could have done so much more with this character. So he's in kind of that headspace where he wants to keep going with it. But you're right, it's like maybe too much of a good thing.
It just went the wrong direction too. I think if it would have been more about the bowling side of the character, it would have been a better movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he's known for being a really good bowler. And
Right.
by the way, I had to mention the dance that he does after he bowls a strike. It's just so funny. I laugh every time I see it. When he turns around and does a little dance and he does a little pose, it's so funny. And it's so well done. I even try to do it sometimes when I go bowling. You know, I never do it quite as well as John Turturro did it, but it is fun.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So who else do we want to talk about?
Julianne Moore. She's in there.
Obviously, the note I have, what note did I have? I wrote down, like, what accent is this? Like, what accent is she using? And I thought, I don't know, she's doing maybe a Katharine Hepburn kind of thing. She's also based on I think Julianne Moore said she based her on our visual artist, Carolee Schneemann. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And I think, so that's where maybe she got the voice from. But when she read the script, I think Joel or Ethan came up to her and said, I really love that accent. And she said, it's not an accent, it's an affectation, which I thought was an interesting point of view. But yeah, she's I don't know, that accent is just one of a kind. So it's just,
I mean, a good performance on her part. I think she did bring some of that stuff for the character to the table. I don't think it was in the script originally, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought she brought the whole, she has this feminine paintings that she does. I thought that was Julianne Moore's idea, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so again, with the artist that she was kind of sampling, I don't know, is there anything, maybe that accent, it reminded me of the Hepburn-esque accent that Jennifer Jason Leigh had in Hudsucker Proxy.
Okay, yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah, but I don't know if, because Jennifer Jason Leigh in that movie is such a character, like a main character, but in here Maude isn't really a character. So I don't know if it served that same kind of purpose, or it wasn't much of a distraction because she wasn't so front and center. So with the accent and everything. But yeah, it's like Julianne Moore's always great. She's always invested. I just don't know if it's like she just given enough and she just played it to hilt and didn't need to do any more with it.
All right, so here's another actor who is in this movie, not as much as I would like him to be, but Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Is it Brent or Brandt?
Brandt.
Brandt. Oh my gosh! Just first of all, the way he opens and closes doors, that enough is enough for me to like give him an Academy Award.
Where he bows.
This grand fashion. It is so funny to watch him open and close these big old double doors. But anyway, awesome performance by Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is what you get with Philip. So,
well, the thing that really sucks about him, like he was such a talent. If we talk about Goodman. And I'm sorry, I don't recall us talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman previously in an episode, but if we're talking about John Goodman, like being terrifying one moment and cuddly the next, Philip Seymour Hoffman has this kind of innate ability, like in Along Came Polly, to play this like pathetic nothing character, or Twister, where he's in that, like that's where we first noticed him, I think. But then he does Mission Impossible 3, like he does like Punch Drunk Love.
Mr. Ripley.
Talented Mr. Ripley. He is a chameleon. Like he'll just do anything. I think when he plays Bratton here, just the way he's and his nostrils flare and he's just so over the top. He's another one of those actors I think we mentioned in the Few Good Men episode how during a Charlie Wilson's War, Philip Seymour Hoffman really grabbed onto that Aaron Sorkin dialogue and just ran with it. And obviously he's going to be so talented that he's going to sink his teeth into something like that. It's the same thing with the Coens, just the way, I don't know, man. Whenever I see him, my heart breaks a little bit because I'm like, number one, we're going to get a great performance, a memorable performance from him. Another thing too is how many more performances could we have gotten from him?
Yeah.
So yeah, just what an incredible talent, and everybody that works with him misses him. So yeah, it's great to see him in anything, and he, like I said, he sinks his teeth into this one. He's just so funny. He's so funny in this.
Is that it as far as the actors and stuff, or you want to talk about anybody else?
Well, we talked about Stormare. He has another really silly accent. We talked about Flea. We talked about Sam Elliott. I thought it was funny how he just kind of pops into a shot, like the camera moves where there's nobody sitting next to the dude at the bar, and then the camera moves, and then it pans back, and then Sam Elliott is sitting right there. I just laughed at that, and so he.
I will say this too. I think he was another reason why I didn't like this movie. Like, I don't know, because I didn't understand why he was there. I knew he was a narrator in the beginning, but I was just kind of like, why is he gonna keep popping up? It was just kind of like, it almost took me out of the movie when I first saw this movie. But I love it now, so don't get me wrong. I think it's great, but like in the beginning, I wasn't really that fond of it.
Yeah. Well, what is the they say the F word or something like that? What, 281 times?
Yeah, that's according to Wikipedia. According to Google, it's 292. So
okay. Well, they say it a lot, to the point where I was like, I don't know if like the kids wouldn't be able to step foot in the room for 10
points that out. You guys say the F word so much? Yeah.
you got to do with all the cuss words. I thought that was really funny. So yeah, I don't know, that voice and that mustache, it's just very like bam, like right in your face. So yeah, but we talked like performances, great performances across the board. I think everybody, even Tara Reid, really sinks her teeth into everything, really plays the role exactly as they should, or more if necessary.
Yeah. You mentioned the F word being said 292 times. The dude was spoken 161 times, and then man was 147. Yeah. So there's a lot of F's and dudes and mans.
Right. I think John Goodman even said that every man and every dude was like in the script. Like they didn't really improvise a lot of this.
Well,
stuff.
even the uhs and the ums are written in the script. Like they have such a way of like writing this dialogue with that cadence that they have. They even put the uhs and the like all those uhs and knows, they're all in there on purpose.
Right. Well, the thing that's interesting too, if we're talking about like the performances and improv and things like that, and what the point is, like going back to Raising Arizona, I just didn't get it. And it took like a viewing 10, 20 years after the fact for it to finally click with me what was going on, to the point where I think it's just a master class in everything. It's coming after Fargo, having such a lackadaisical kind of stoner comedy. You're like, well, what is this? Like, they're all over the map. It's not so much that the Coens jump genres, it's that they jump, I don't know, attitudes or tones or things like that. So this is very far removed from Fargo, which was very far removed from Hudsucker Proxy, which is very removed from Barton Fink. So they're all different, but they're the same. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah. But the thing that if you're trying to latch onto some kind of meaning here, and obviously we're building something a little bit bigger, but the first meaning that I kind of want to go after, I like how they base this movie off of Raymond Chandler novels or movies, kind of like a film noir mystery, except they switch it so that it's a stoner. Instead of Philip Marlowe, it's this like person that isn't an investigator, like the opposite of somebody who's like very smart and very intuitive and things like that. So is Chandler something that, or those mysteries in film noirs, is that something that you're familiar with enough that
the only one I am aware of is The Big Sleep, the Humphrey Bogart? That's the only one that I'm really aware of.
Okay.
Are there more?
Well, obviously he wrote like Double Indemnity. He wrote The Long Goodbye. Like again, Philip Marlowe's a tie-in. So The Big Sleep, that's definitely something that I do want to talk about. It did remind me of that. There are some parts that did remind me. So if we're looking at it from obviously the Humphrey Bogart movie, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So you've got the dude who's Philip Marlowe. You've got the Big Lebowski, the Jeffrey Lebowski, the paraplegic or whatever. He's General Sternwood from The Big Sleep. There's a scene where Philip Marlowe comes into Sternwood's house and they're chatting about stuff, and he sends him on a case or something like that. You've got Maud, who's the Vivian Sternwood, the Lauren Bacall character in that movie, where she's kind of the responsible sister. And then you have Bunny, who's Carmen Sternwood, who's like she's caught up in the pornography. She's a nymphomaniac, obviously, and things like that. And so there are those big sleep type things. If we're talking The Long Goodbye, I don't know if it's so much the book as Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye with Elliot Gould, to the point where at the beginning of the movie, he loses his cat. And that's what gets him involved in this case. Where in this one, the dude loses his rug, and that gets him involved in the case, right? So there's those tie-ins. But I think the Coen brothers, they wanted to do like a Chandler-esque type mystery, and that's why they based it in Los Angeles, to kind of show the seedier underbelly of things like that, to show different classes, different types of people that the dude has to deal with. And part of the great thing about the dude's character is that he adapts. Like no matter what situation he's in, he's able to kind of vibe with that person's personality, even if it's just kind of sitting back and letting them talk, which happens a lot of the time. So they implicitly trust him right? But that's what Philip Marlowe does. He's able to wade into a situation and kind of get people's characters and get a feel for them and how they have a place in the story and what role that they play and things like that. And so I know we talked about, I don't know, do you think the dude is a smart character or is he dumb? How would you describe him?
Man, well, I didn't think he was smart when I first saw it. I think I don't think he's dumb. I don't think that. I think like you say, he's able to adapt. The dude abides. He gets along. But I think you gotta be kind of smart in order to do that. You kind of gotta have your wits about you in order to kind of like, find your way through these problems that come your way. He has to be. He has to be smart. You know what I mean? So I would say he's definitely on the smarter side.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know if he's like I said, super smart, but he's very empathetic, right? He knows situations, able to be in tune with people. The thing that I like is, again, I wouldn't say he's dumb, like you said, but he's very aware. But he does something interesting. Well, he'll take words or specific phrases that characters have said to him, and he'll spin it around and use it on them. Like, I know that Maud uses the word vagina, and so he's able to use the word vagina on her. I know that there's
uses the word coitus. He goes
coitus. Yeah, that's right. When the Big Lebowski tells him, like, my wife's life is in your hands, like, he keeps repeating that and he shoots it back. Maud says at one point, she says the quote, parlance of our times. And so he uses that later in the limo.
Right. I know.
So, so I don't know. He's just able to he learns from people and he's able to kind of spit it back out. Learns might be a weird, like, he's able to like kind of spin it back to the point where he sees the George H. Bush, like, talking about the Iraq war, like, this aggression will not stand, where he repeats that dialogue at least twice. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I thought that was just, and so as far as the Chandler thing, that's a very, and he's the one that solves it. I know that we talked about Walter, like, intuiting that some of these things are not right, and he gets it right, but he does get some things wrong. He gets the part wrong with the Larry character, where he thinks he bought the car or whatever, and it turns out to be disastrous. Yeah. Like, that's not what it turns out. Or he thinks that Big Lebowski is not a paraplegic, but he actually is. He throws him on the ground. But it's the dude that solves it. He's one that's like, there wasn't any money in the case. Like, he figures out, like, Big Lebowski, like, you're not the rich person. You're taking this from your ex-wife, and so you figured out a way to kind of embezzle the money and get the $1 million from your own company so that you can have that yourself. So he gets that,
right?
You know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting. The characters too. Again, we're wading into something here because I don't know if this movie has actual meaning, like Raising Arizona does. They will say all the time, the Coens that we mentioned before, that this movie means a lot more to other people than it does to us. So do you think it's a case of people taking up the ball and running with it, or is there actual meaning here?
Well, I can see people probably finding their own meanings from it. I know that there's a moment in the movie where doesn't Maud say "What makes a man" or something like that, and he says that in a pair of testicles or something like that. I don't know who says that line, but I mean, I think that's an underlying theme, masculinity, and also you got her with the feminine paintings, and you got the whole pornography undertone going on too with Jackie Treehorn. But anyway, I can see people taking their own meanings from it, though.
Right. So another thing that we haven't done this in a bit, but I did take to Twitter. Like, usually when we watch a movie like this, I'll say, I'm watching this movie. What does everybody think? And they'll chime in. And so what was really fun is that I asked for their opinions of what they thought the movie was about. And people had either different meanings or they had no meaning. So I sent you a list of people. So if we want to go and just go ahead and read some of these, I'll go ahead and start. So this is the input that I got. So at It's a Lone Wolf, he says the point of the movie is it doesn't really make any sort of sense, and yet it doesn't have to. I always watched it and took it like I'm waltzing through a dream that the dude is having. It's brilliant.
Okay. Then Sam Cooper Film says it's a timeless film with the important message to relax, take a breather, don't worry yourself in times of conflict and adversity.
Okay, that's a good one. Master of One Ink One, Master of One Inch Punch. We've talked about him before. He says the movie's about a guy in his rug. It's really just an insanely quotable film that's fun and easy for repeat viewings.
Yeah, I agree with that. I Hate Claim says, for me, it's a stoner version of Altman's The Long Goodbye. You talked about
Right.
that.
We mentioned that. Brian, our friend, Brian Scuttle, who is going to be making an appearance later in the season. He says that I enjoyed it, but definitely didn't have the same affection for it that I had for Fargo or do now. I basically just love spending time with these characters.
Yeah, just watch it more often, Brian. That's all I gotta do. Watch it. Give it
Yeah,
more.
it'll click. It'll click, right.
Let's see. DCGT Carlo, we believe in nothing, Lebowski, nothing. It's hilarious cavalcade of meaningless nothing. Emphasis on hilarious, which I agree with.
Yeah. And Carlos, somebody that's might be popping up later too, just another friend on Twitter. David Rosen of Piecing Pod, he says, I don't know if I can fully express it in a tweet, but it's 100% a perfect movie. It's one of the few.
Wow, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Wacko Jacko's Flicks says, similarly to another Jeff Bridges film I adore, Cutter's Way, The Big Lebowski, is a much funnier and absurdist tale of down on luck fringe of society types who sleuth around and head on tackle a conspiracy of malicious and greedy dirtbags. Walt and the dude's friendship warms me.
Interesting. So again, just a little grab bag of little ideas. I don't know if there is a deeper meaning other than it's just, you talked about the masculinity, the femininity thing, the emasculation. Like, what is a man? Like, Big Lebowski is can't use his legs, right? Walter goes on and on about fighting in the Vietnam War. Like, is that his purpose? Things like that. The nihilists. What is the name of their the band?
The Autobahn.
The Autobahn, which is a spinoff of Kraftwerk. But like they threatened to cut off the dude's Johnson. So there's that, and there's the dream sequence where they're talking like the scissors are going to cut off his thing, or whatever. So there's that. That's the theme that runs through it. The other, so there's what I think is interesting is it's a nostalgia piece. That's another thing that I thought was funny to look at. Like, every character in here is living in the past, and they're kind of holding on to their past. And by the end, they're still got that past. They really haven't let it go, I don't think. So if you're looking at the characters, you got the dude who's the hippie culture of the 60s, right? So again, most of these are nostalgic for the 60s. You got Walter, who's a Vietnam veteran who just talks about Vietnam, right? You've got the Jackie Treehorn character who's like Hugh Hefner in his prime during the 60s when he was running Playboy. You've got, what did I have? The Julianne Moore character. She is, Maud is like, what's the word I'm looking for? She's embodying the I think Fluxus movement. It's like during the 60s or 70s, there were these artists that would paint with their bodies and do all these things and just performative. And so that obviously ties in. So they're living in the 60s. But then you have like the Big Lebowski, and you have like Brandt, who seem to be more 80s fused. Like Brandt is like, he's got the wife, the trophy wife and things like that. That's very like, seems 80s, like you're trying to latch on to like money, and money is the object of what you're after. Same thing with Brandt. He's like just serving this master, right? That's all about like money and things like that. And then you have the 90s stuff with the Iraq War where Saddam Hussein shows up. And so it's even like the 60s is kind of counter to what war is, and that movement that had kind of been countered in the 60s. So you have all these interesting things going on. You have, like you talked about, those themes of emasculation. You've got all the like the characters living in the past. You've got the theme that I like that some of our friends mentioned is it's just the dude is just, he's got this relaxed attitude. It's like, why get so, and to the point where he gets upset when he gets his life is in shambles, right? He's like, I just want to go back, like, give me my rug. Like, I was happy with my rug. It really tied the room together, that kind of thing. So is that the attitude of the movie, to the point where the narrator says, I'm glad that the dude is out there, right? Because he has that attitude of don't take things so seriously, like just relax a little bit. I don't know. What do you think?
He's taking it easy for the rest of us. Like I mentioned before, like I sometimes take things too seriously, and I've always, been admired people who can just kind of go with the flow. So maybe that's what he's there for.
Right. But again, I think Raising Arizona is very much about parenthood. There's no way like to miss that. I think as controversial as the ending to No Country for Old Men is, it's about like losing your grip on what like changing times. Like it's hard for the Tommy Lee Jones character to understand where the Javier Bardem character is coming from. He can't understand it because he's so set in his ways. So that's a theme there. With Big Lebowski, do you think all these things that we're talking about, Johnny, do you think personally that there is a meaning to that, or is it just kind of fringe kind of stuff, like to give it a personality?
Maybe. Like I say, I really don't know. Like, I don't know if they really intended to put a meaning into this movie. Like, they probably just wrote the movie and then said, take what you want from it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which I think actually helps the movie, because that way you can find what you want, and you can pull what you're looking for out of it as you're watching it.
Yeah. Well, like Brian said, he just likes hanging out with the characters. We talked about meaning in Fight Club and what all that means. We talked about meaning in Men in Black, like the nothing is what it seems. We talked about meaning in That Thing You Do, where that thing you do is maybe it could be just a surface level movie, and it's fine. It's bubblegum fun. It's great. But if you're looking for it, there are deeper meanings. I just think with this one, like we're talking about, maybe Big Lebowski will grow over time. So when 10 years down the line, it'll actually mean something to me. Will I want to go attend Lebowski Fest? And because I'm attuned with that attitude. But as of right now, I just think that it's more interesting to think of all the things that it kind of mentions and dabbles in. But it's more just, it's so funny. Like just to sit and just hang out with these guys. And
it just makes you laugh.
Yeah. So what, I don't know, do you want to talk about like the gags and
well, sure, but real quick, I just want to mention this real quick. There is a YouTube video out there. I don't know where I saw it, but I think it was just like on when it kind of plays the next video, it just kind of popped up, and it was just a video of these kids on this balcony, and they were shouting down to, like, you know, a bum or somebody who was on the street, and they were shouting down to this guy quotes from the movie The Big Lebowski. And so this guy thought he was actually talking to them, so he'd respond back to them and start trying to, you know, tell them, you know, I don't know what he was trying to tell them, but as he was talking to them, they were going back and forth, and all the kids were doing was saying quotes from the movie, and he was like thinking they were talking to him, but they were just saying quotes. It's really funny. I mean, it's when you know they're just quoting the movie, it's really funny to watch, because just the guy's reaction is hilarious. But also, there's another video where it's just all the swear words in the movie, like every swear word just cut really quickly together. And so if you listen to it, it's just a bunch of, you know, F words. Then all of a sudden you will hear Julianne Moore say vagina. And of course, you know, the word Johnson's thrown there too. So you hear, like, you know, all the F words and then vagina and then Johnson. And again, I don't know where that video is or who made it, but it's a pretty funny video.
That's great. Well, that would have been funny gags for the movie too. I mean, what some of the gags that made me laugh. I like that. So when Walter threatens, who does he threaten? I can't remember the name of the other bowler there, who's also like a Vietnam kind of vet or whatever. And then they walk out, and as the dude and Walter are talking, all of a sudden you see the cop cars like show up, and the cops jump out and they run in, like they're responding to the. I thought that was really funny. I like
really late, like
yeah, but they respond like in force, even though like they're very like, again, I'm using that word a lot, lackadaisical. They're both in the car just chatting as this stuff. They don't even notice. I like the gag of they call the Yorkie Terrier a Pomeranian. And being the owner of like several Yorkie Terriers, like when it came out, I was like, that's not a Pomeranian. I liked how, or they call like what is the little pet that the Stormare has?
Oh, it's a ferret.
Ferret, but he calls it a marmot.
Well, yeah, isn't a ferret a marmot?
It's a form of it, but it's like, it's not, but you don't call it a marmot, like you call it a ferret. So I like that gag. I like that the dog like follows John Goodman around, like, and obviously the dog likes him because he's looking at him. Yeah. I like that stuff. I like when they go to see first of all, I like that the landlord, they go to the Marty, I think is his name. Like they go to his performance piece, and it's so weird. Yeah. It's so funny. But then you see Walter come in and he's like dressed up, and you're like, oh, that's nice. He got dressed up for the performance, but he didn't. He got dressed up so he could go and he could threaten Larry.
But I like that also shows that the dude is loyal, and that's what he says he's gonna do. Like he was invited to the show. He's like, I'll be there, man. And he actually went to it. He actually went to the show. Even though all this crap is happening, he found time to go to this landlord show, which is, I think, is like speaks to his character.
Donnie is really into it. Like Donnie's just like, he's just watching like he's infatuated. But
I love that Donnie only cares about the In-N-Out burger too. Those are good burgers.
Yeah, I love that. Did you notice like when they actually eat the In-N-Out burger that it's not In-N-Out burger?
I
Like,
did notice that.
yeah,
The
I'm like,
actual
that's
wrappers.
not In-N-Out. But like we're talking, Walter, he gets dressed up he's not getting dressed up for the performance. He got dressed up to go and threaten Larry. I like how he says to Larry, watch out the window. I'd watch out the window and then it has just this quick shot of Larry like watching out the window. I thought that was very funny. It's very clever. So
that whole scene is by far one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie. Is this your homework, Larry? In fact, there's a movie that's called Dude, Where's Your Car with Ashton Kutcher. Yeah. Anyway, obviously taken from this movie because there's a part where dude loses his car and he's like, "Where's your car, dude?" I want to write a script with the title, "Is This Your Homework, Larry?" So that's going to be the next screenplays I write. It's going to be called "Is This Your Homework, Larry?"
Yeah, you got such a good rapport in that thing. The other gag I really liked, how all the characters think that the dude is smarter or more involved than he is, to the point where they're all monologuing at him, and he doesn't. Where he starts monologuing and his monologues are just nonsense. Like they don't make any sense. Like he doesn't come to any point or any kind of thing but like they project their feelings onto him, and he doesn't, like we talked about, he adapts. And so they trust him, or the Big Lebowski thinks, oh, this guy's a real moron. I could really play with this guy. But I loved how everybody like talks at him and they talk over him and he really doesn't say anything. I like the gag I wrote down, like, why do people keep breaking into his house and wrecking his stuff and beating him up? I thought that was funny. Were there any gags that you liked that I haven't mentioned?
He tries to booby trap his door, or put the chair in front of his door, and the door opens out.
Yeah, just these really, I don't know. There's just these really funny, and I think they were scripted. I think that's the thing. I think that all the gags in here were scripted. It's not like they're just improvising it like an Anchorman or something like that. It's just feels like it's the Coens, just this off.
One of the first things I laugh at is when he writes a check for 69 cents for the half and half, for the milk and cream, whenever he's buying. Right. 69 cents. That's all he read, and he post dates it too.
But then what was the line where he gets assaulted and they shove his face in the toilet? What was his, like, where's your wife?
Yeah, it is down there. Let me take another look.
That was really funny. I liked what else did I have here? I like that they keep reusing a lot of the dialogue. Like a lot of scenes are just repeated dialogue over and over and over and over again. It's just we mentioned the ringing phone, things like that. I don't know. It's just
a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have yous.
It's I don't know, you could take it and you could have meaning, or you can just have fun with the gags and the way that the people talk and just the atmosphere.
That might have been my problem. I might have been trying to find something deeper in it when I first saw it, and then when I couldn't find anything, I just kind of rejected it. And then later I realized, hey, let's just have fun with this. And I think now I really appreciate just for the fact that it just makes me laugh all the time. So
right, well, as a kind of a salve or an opposite to that thing you do, I think that thing you do is very literal. When you find that anti-establishment meaning, it's there. And I think it's this in here, the meaning is at a different level where it's there, but that's really not the point. The whole point is about the zen and the feeling that you get while watching this, being in the dude's headspace. The final gag that I really liked is they keep building up this tournament. They keep building up the bowling tournament, building it up and building it up. And, they keep like talking about when it's going to happen, or I'm really going to beat you this time. And then you never see it.
I know.
It doesn't build a bowling climax.
I know. And that's frustrating for me because I want to see that.
You want to see it, right? So I don't know. Was there anything else we want to talk about with the Big Lebowski? Is it just a movie? If we're gonna end this on something, should we end it with here's the meaning, or just end it with here's a fun movie? And it's got all these little.
The Big Lebowski abides. It's been there since 1998 and it's still going strong today. So.
To the point where Roger Ebert, I think he reviewed it and gave it 3 stars. And then like 10 years later for his great movies segment, he gave it 4 stars.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I like that. Like I said, I like that it has an outer life past the movie. I like that people are taking it to the point where it's a religion for people and they're kind of living this. I like that it means, like, some people like us, like we watch it, we brush it off or we don't like it. But the more we go back to it, the more we think about it, we start laughing at things. We like the little gags. We like the attitude. We like the, just the feeling that it gives you of just hanging out with these people. Even though they do say the F word, 292 times, like it's still part of this world. And there's no, it gets to the point where Walter is going to beat up the nihilist, and you think it's the nihilist, and you think it's going to be like, oh, here's where his stuff comes, but then he turns animalistic and he bites the guy's ear off. So it always descends into insanity where you don't take anything seriously in this whole movie. When Maude, they finish having sex or whatever, and she's doing those little yoga poses, I thought was really funny. But I wrote down, like, she thinks he has good genes. Like, I don't know. It's just,
well, that's why he had to go to that doctor who was so thorough.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just, as of right now, I think I've just settled on the movie being just a fun, atmospheric kind of vibe. It's a vibe movie, right? You just vibe with it.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to have a good time, this movie will give that to you. So
yeah, just a lot of interesting things on the fringes. So again, great one to talk about. Big Lebowski. I'm glad that we're able to chat about this one.
When I think about it, I thought about like other movies that have the word big in the title.
Yeah.
So how many can you think of that have the word big in the title? Just off the top of your head, like how many movies have the word big in the title? Like quick.
Okay. Big, Big Sleep, Big Business, The Big Boss, Big Trouble in Little China.
The Big Easy.
The Big Easy. There you go. That's a good one. Big Chill. Okay, good. You keep going.
How about,
I'm trying to think.
There's one I worked on, and we had Dwayne Anderson on as one of our guests that he produced. It's called Big Trouble in Little Tokyo.
Okay, Big Trouble.
I was the first AD on that movie, so even I've worked on a movie that has the word "big" in the title.
All right, that's nice. I'm sure there's others. I could just turn it around and kind of subtly and see what movies called Big.
Yeah.
All right.
Big Lebowski, good movie.
Okay, sounds good. So was that our outro topic, or we want to come back and talk about something else?
No, we can do something else. I think we could talk about maybe some of our top 3 movies that have the word "big" in the title. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, we can do that. That sounds fun. Just off the cuff, kind of like the movie itself. So that's fun. Let's come back and talk about that.
All right, we'll come back and do that.
Okay.
I tripped on a cloud and fell 8 miles high. I tore my mind on a jagged sky. I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.
Yeah, oh yeah, what condition my condition was in.
All right, welcome back. So, Darin, we talked about doing a top 3 list of our favorite movies with the word "big" in the title. Did you think of any other movies before we do that we talked about previously that had the word "big" in the title?
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't think of some of these things. Big Hero 6 is one. My kids watch that a lot. My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Tim Burton had Big Eyes and Big Fish.
Right.
Big Daddy, Adam Sandler. Big Night, Tony Shalhoub.
The one that I thought of that I didn't mention is The Big Empty.
The Big
Jon
Empty.
Favreau. Right.
Yep, that's a good one. Big Mama's House. Big Mama's House too, I guess you could say. The Big Heat, Glenn Ford. The Big Parade from 1925. So yeah, there's just a bunch. There's a bunch of big movies. I can't believe I forgot. You blindsided me. So what was I supposed to do? Yeah.
All right, so let's do 3, 2, 1 again. And you go ahead and go first with your favorite, or your not whatever. Could be your favorite, could be just a movie that you really enjoy.
Okay, or that I want to talk about. So my third one that I want to talk about, I mentioned Big Eyes, Big Fish. Let's talk about Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Okay.
I think that was a good intro to Tim Burton, just very off-kilter. Pee-wee Herman's like a good mix for that. Just very funny, like I said, off-kilter stuff. It's just a silly movie. You know, Pee-wee chases after his bike, goes through Hollywood, meets Large Marge, things like that, fights with Godzilla on a Hollywood set. But it's got the Danny Elfman score. It's got them dancing, to the in the bar. I can't remember the name. Obviously, the Tequila, right? They're dancing to that song. One of my favorite gags in the whole movie is when Pee-wee calls his girlfriend and he's like, "I'm in Texas," and she's like, "Prove it." And he goes, "The stars at night are big and bright," and everybody in the crowd goes, "Deep in the heart of Texas." Like, so funny. Just humor that, speaking of, Big Lebowski, speaking of humor that just comes out of nowhere. I think Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Big Top Pee-wee, was the sequel. But that's a good intro to Tim Burton, just his sensibilities. Yeah, so before he kind of got caught up in his own mystique, I think early Tim Burton is better than later Tim Burton.
Yeah, I agree with that. My number 3 pick, I'm going to go ahead and plug the one I plugged in the meat of our conversation, which is the Dwayne Anderson produced, Dave Boyle directed,
Big Dreams, Little Tokyo.
I had so much fun working on this movie. They hired me as the first AD, and I swear, like every day on set, it didn't feel like I was working. It just felt like we were just creating something really special, and it was really fun to work on. And I just love this movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's called
Big Dreams, Little Tokyo.
One of my favorite movies I've ever worked on to date. Like,
is it a comedy, drama, action?
It's a comedy. Yeah, it's basically about these two guys. Well, one of them speaks Japanese, the other one is Japanese, and they go around trying to make their way in the world of Japanese business. And it's just really funny. All kind of shenanigans happen. I'm trying to say what it reminds me of, but it's definitely unique. It did really well at AFI Film Festival, if I'm not mistaken. So
cool.
I know you can find it online. It's there. So
Big Dreams, Little Tokyo.
And I have a cameo in it, or a little featured part in it too. So you might see me on screen.
All right, that's worth it. Okay, so for my number 2, we covered this in an episode. It was one of our nostalgia bites that we ended up talking for 45 minutes. So not really the. I'm going to pick Big from 1998.
Okay.
1988. We mentioned Tom Hanks. We've talked about him quite a bit. I think Big, and we mentioned this during that episode too. Big is the movie that you watch, you're like, oh my gosh, he's not just the funny guy. He's an actor. Like, he can have nuances and he can give an actual performance and give us something interesting. Just him being able to play that kid in the adult's body. And I know that it gets a lot of pushback because it's like the white man fails upward kind of thing. The women kind of get pushed aside. There, like we talked about, there is that awkward kind of subplot where it's the Susan character, the Elizabeth Perkins character, kind of sleeping her way to the top. But, you know, if it was directed by a man, it might have had a different feel. I think Penny Marshall directing it just kind of gave it like this kind of everything's okay. It's all in good fun kind of attitude, right? And it was the first movie directed by a woman to gross $100 million at the box office. So I think that definitely says something and earns its place. So again, check out our episode on Big. We had a fun conversation diving into the extra meanings there. But yeah, that's my second choice.
Well, my second choice is Big.
All right.
So there you go. I would agree with you in all you said. It's a great movie. One of my favorite movies, you know, as a kid. I love this movie. I watched it all the time. Tom Hanks is just fantastic in it. And so is what's her name? Crap.
Elizabeth Perkins.
Yep, wow. That's it.
Okay. All right.
He's great too. And definitely you can give props to Penny Marshall for directing this movie. It's very well done.
Yeah. So again, yeah, check out our episode on that. So for number 1, we talked about it at length during the episode itself. I've got The Big Sleep as my number 1. Again, it's not just my number 1 in this list. It is, you know, I have a hard time putting together lists. Like, people put together their top 10 or top 20 list of all time together. And I'm like, first of all, if you ask me to do that, it's going to take me like a year, because I have to sit down and I have to think about all these different meanings in order for it to be my number 1 or my number 2. But then the other thing too is, when I step away from the list and then step back, the list is going to be completely different. So it's like an existential nightmare, because I'm in a different mood trying to figure out these lists, right? But there are a certain handful of movies that I know for fact would end up in my top 20. The Big Sleep from 1946. We're talking about the reshot version after the war. They shelved it originally when they shot it, and then Bacall and Bogey became like an item, and they wanted to capitalize on that, obviously. So they went and reshot a lot of stuff. I'm talking about that reshot version. It's just probably the most entertaining movie I have ever seen in my entire life. It's just
really?
The mysteries. Wow. The mystery's great. The dialogue is so rapid fire. The performances are great. It's got so many, like we talked about, like Bunny being the Carmen kind of stand-in Big Lebowski. So Martha Vickers comes in like her first scene. She flirts up a storm with Humphrey Bogart. And one of my favorite lines is the butler comes out to grab him, and Marlowe's like, yeah, tell me about it. She tried to sit in my lap when I was standing up. So it not only has those dialogue snippets that are just so classic, but the other thing too is it's a story about pornography. It's a story about drugs. It's a story about murder. But instead of a movie today, like a Tarantino movie, wallowing in all this stuff and showing you every little facet, so it's in your face and it's an R-rated, they delve into all these things, but it's dealt in a way that it's offhanded. Like, people get killed. They talk about porn. They talk about all this sex and obviously all this stuff. But it's it's treated like in a way that they hint at it. And I just think that's so inventive and so imaginative. And the plot is so crazy that when Howard Hawks and Bogart they lost track of who killed somebody. So they called up Chandler and said, who killed this person? And Chandler's like, I don't know. Like even the author didn't know who killed us, like a certain victim in the movie. But I don't care. It's all about the atmosphere that the movie creates and the fun that everybody's having. I don't know. It's going to make my list. I don't know where exactly, but I just know that movie is going to place in that top 10 or top 20 because I love it. I love it so much. It's one of the greatest things I've ever laid my eyes or ears on.
Wow. I've never heard you talk about this movie with that much affection before. You had talked about it, but not as much as you did. I mean, I would think that it's one of your favorite movies of all time, hearing you talk about it just now.
Well, I didn't want to lay into it during the episode because that's a tangent that we didn't need to go into.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's definitely a good pick. I like the film noir aspect of it too.
Right.
I'm going to pick, but you can guess what I'm going to pick.
Big Lebowski?
Big Lebowski.
Well, was there anything that you wanted to add that we didn't talk about in the episode? I mean, why?
Let me see. We did talk about the John Turturro spin-off movie, Jesus Rolls. What else I don't think there's anything we didn't cover.
Talked about the gags, talked about the dialogue, the performances.
It's just such a fun movie from the very beginning. That very first opening scene when they walk in and they shove his head in the toilet and it just makes me laugh, and then I just can't stop laughing throughout the whole movie. And I found that that's how it is. The older I get, the more I just want to laugh at something. I could care less about the things that are serious or I appreciate them and I can watch them and I can go, oh, that was cool or that was interesting. But if it makes me laugh, like I'll watch that over anything else.
Yeah. Well, I know the only thing we didn't mention, we talked about Barry Sonnenfeld being an obvious influence in the cinematography. I think Roger Deakins, it was great seeing Roderick James' name. It's great seeing Carter Burwell. It's great seeing Roger Deakins. All these Coen Brothers stalwarts. And even though I don't think the Coen Brothers movies have that same kind of Raising Arizona fun feel, there is a shot inside a bowling ball that was very Sonnenfeld-esque, except it's shot deliberately in a way that felt very Deakins-esque. So even though it had that old Raising Arizona feel, I think there's more of a deliberateness and a seriousness.
Yeah, all the shots in the bowling alley, like going down the lane or going into the the pins, all that stuff behind the scenes, when you're seeing the pins being rolled back up and stuff, all that stuff's really cool, really well done.
Yeah. And the dream sequences, obviously.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so let's mention those. We didn't mention the dream sequences.
Yeah, so very inventive. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know what point they play other than just to show that he's, drugged up or that he's, having a hallucination, been punched in the face. In fact, he gets punched each time he has one of those dreams. So, yeah.
Right.
You mentioned Barry Sonnenfeld, and I just thought of he directed Big Trouble, right?
Yeah,
so another movie with the title Big.
Right. We're just going in circles, all sorts of circling back. Yeah, that's great.
I think that'll do it for the Big Lebowski. Darren, I know we have a guest for our next episode. Who's our guest and what's the movie?
Okay, well, our guest is Josh Bell from Awesome Movie Year. He's half of that team. We'll definitely talk about what they go into, but basically, just to give you a gist, Awesome Movie Year every season, like kind of we're doing, except we're covering a decade. They take 1 year and they look at all these movies that they want to talk about through that year. So I know they started in, I think 1953 is what they're doing now. They just started their new season. 1992 was before that. So they covered A Few Good Men that we covered, Unforgiven. Before that, they did 1980, Empire Strikes Back, a lot of these things. So it's a really fun podcast. David Rosen, again, from Piecing Pod that we've had on before, good friend. He produces the show. So he kind of sticks his head in and chats with them a little bit. But yeah, we were deliberate. The movie that he chose, I was deliberately vague during our conversation on The Big Lebowski because Josh wanted to talk Fargo, also from the Coen Brothers. I know that one was on your list of movies that you wanted to talk about initially. And again, Fargo, like I briefly mentioned, it's just one of these indelible, all of a sudden classic out of nowhere. Like, oh my gosh, they went from the Hudsucker Proxy to this. And so we definitely want to talk about that. But Coen Brothers, like Tarantino, we talked about them in the 90s. They're going to be a big thing. I just thought it would be funny to kind of do like a double header of Coen Brothers movies. So
yeah, that'll be good. That sounds fun.
Fargo next time. Okay. All right. Don't you know?
All right. Well, then for NostalgiaCast, I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darren Lundberg.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time on Nostalgia Cast.